Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to Sleeping Saturday. And if you're listening to this on Facebook, welcome, welcome. We do this every day, and you're invited to join our very, very secret and exclusive Platinum Package Zoom members. All you got to do is email Mara at wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com, and you can join the ranks of this very elite team we have here. It's sort of like a secret society, sort of like that.
But not really.
Okay, we have secret handshakes, secret things where we wave our finger on our nose, everything like that. But you need to get those codes to get on Zoom because we just don't allow anybody in. So if you're listening to on Facebook, email us, wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com. And after you pass a certain type of test, we will let you in. We're not going to share that test. We got to wait till you apply. And it's questions and answers day. And we do this at 8 a.m. every Saturday. Sunday is a day off tomorrow. We usually have a guest, but it's my family. It's my birthday weekend. I'm taking the whole weekend from my birthday. And good morning, everybody. We've got a chock full of questions for you from our people.
Okay. But we should also mention that although there's no show tomorrow morning, you and I will be appearing on the late morning program show by Nam Ras, right?
Now, unless you lived in an ashram, you might not get the double meaning of that.
Entendre.
That double entendre, right? Which is the late morning program. So in the temple, there's a morning program. And so he's called. The name of his podcast is called The Late Morning Program.
I think there's also like a little subtle kind of thing. Like if you're living in the ashram, you kind of get in a little bit of trouble if you're late for the morning program, right?
Yeah, you can't be late for the morning program. So it's the late morning program. It's sort of very, very funny if you live in the ashram. Otherwise, it just sounds like it's sort of a late morning program.
That's not in the morning.
Extremely funny. So our friend Nam Ras is going to interview us for his podcast. Which is sort of like an in-house Krishna-y podcast, but it's cool.
Yeah.
And I listened to it. It's been around before we did Wisdom of the Sages. It's been around for a while. Yeah, it has been. But we love him.
Maybe you're right. Maybe probably was. In any case, that's at 3 p.m. tomorrow. So
I've known him since he was a little boy. Do you know that?
I have too.
He's a full-on man with a beard. Like that
two
makes you a
children
man
now.
once you have a beard. 2 children.
Yeah.
He's married to Johnny Harrison's sister, Tulsi Harrison, who's also incredible kirtan lady. Both of them are incredible at kirtan.
Yeah.
I feel like those people are just born not that dented and like talented.
No, they were born into a very unique situation. Incredible parents.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. They're born into like
non-dentedness
families, undented cans.
Yeah.
And they're very talented. They're born with talent, and I'm envious of them. If you want to know the honest truth,
let it go.
I'm envious of them, and I want what they have.
You can't have it. Maybe next life. But that's in any case. That's at 3 p.m. and Raghunath and I will share that, or maybe Wisdom of the Sages will share that. We'll share that too. So if you want to tune in at 3, you can find it easy. Otherwise, you search for Nam Rasa, Namarasa.
Yeah, no. Also, I want to announce that today, if you want to chill and hear, I'm giving an inspiring lecture for 2.5 hours. If you can deal with it, me for 2.5 hours on the 6 pillars of Bhakti, you can sign up at supersoulyoga.com today. And
How inspiring
sign
do
up.
you intend to be?
I'm very inspiring today. Super, super inspiring. It's all from my book I'm working on, 6 Pillars of Bhakti. Transform your life, your love, and most of all, your connection with spirit through these essential principles of Bhakti Yoga.
All right.
So that's at 10 to 12:30 Eastern Time. Sign up on supersoulyoga.com. Let's
Okay.
dive into this beautiful stuff here.
Questions?
Questions.
Who's reading the first one? This first question's for the two of us.
Okay, this is from Mike Conway. I'll read it to you, brother.
Okay.
First of all, I want to thank you both for opening up the world of wisdom contained in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It has changed my life forever. Keep doing everything as you're doing it right now. Well, then I'll never get anywhere. It is perfect service for all of us. I have a question for Kaustubha and Raghunath. Through much practice, association, wisdom of the sages, and taking shelter of Guru, I have firmly arrived at the decision to become a brahmachari. A brahmachari is like how you would say a monk in other traditions. It means like a
Student monk,
celibate
right?
student, which is a tall order in Kali Yuga, this age that we live in. But it's a noble desire. I am already taking the advice of senior devotees as to how to get started on this path, as well as sorting out the logistics. That was very well put. Sorting out the logistics. There is no longer any debate in my mind as to whether or not I will do this. I heard the call, and right now may likely be my only window to practice as a brahmachari. I'm almost 29 years old. Good point. You get a little window in there.
Mm-hmm. Take it.
All right. Take that window. Why not? Why not? What do you got to lose?
One
I
or
have
2 or 3 years of his life. Sanity.
trying to enjoy the material world.
a lot of, yeah,
You
a
know,
lot of
no,
material
but
enjoyment.
it's true. Why not? I always tell my kids too. Hey, live in an ashram for a year. Big deal. It was a fun year. I don't regret. And anytime I do something of self-regulation, I never regret it. If I've done a fast or was a brahmachari, I always look back and I say, special time. Glad I did it. So anyway, he says I'm almost 29 years old. However, I have some time, at least a month or so, to begin preparing my mind and heart for this process. I have been living monkish lifestyle, rising at 4 a.m., practicing an arati, that's the worshiping of
It's a ritual.
on the altar, rituals, chanting 16 rounds. This is pretty impressive, Mike Conway.
Yeah.
Offering my food, reading the Bhagavatam and Gita nearly every day, etc. My question to both
I'm
of
so
you
happy to hear all that.
yeah, it's super impressive, is how can one prepare his or her mind for the transition to brahmachari lifestyle? How does one prepare to take the brahmachari path in order to enter the ashram with proper mood and intentions? What are the practices I can do and the moods I can cultivate that will ensure I take this with the proper attitude? Also, what are the attitudes and moods that could make brahmachari process difficult to endure or unfruitful? Both of you are former monks and that I trust you very deeply. Any insight and inspiration you have will be incredibly helpful. I'm sure I have a lot of insight with this. I'm sure you do too. You go first.
Okay. Yeah, first, hey, congratulations on the determination that you developed, to do this. It's brahmacharya is fundamentally it's considered to be a training period, right? It would be the first stage of life that would train someone for the second stage of life, which would be marriage and working in the world and dealing with money and dealing with family and all that kind of stuff. So you go into it with a very strong spiritual foundation. And I would say a few things come to my mind. And that is that first one is a bit of, I don't know if warning is that's how I want to say it. Or,
I was going to go right to warning too.
We're going to go to warning? Okay. Here's the warning.
I was going to go to warning.
Here's the warning that this is how Shastra, how the scriptures speak of what brahmacharya is, right? It is a time of training. It's a time of spiritual training. You should be, and I see it as a time of training in the yogic texts, right? It's a time to learn, Bhagavad Gita. It's a time to learn Srimad Bhagavatam, etc. I would also say it's a time to learn music. It's a time to learn cooking. It's a time to learning ritual. If I were going into this all over again, I would want to make sure that in the years that I would be a brahmachari, I would want to learn shastra, learn the sacred text. I would want to learn music. Even I'm not saying become an expert, but at least learn how to lead a kirtan and play music simply. I would want to learn cooking, and I would want to learn ritual because they're all essential parts of the bhakti yoga culture. Um, and so this is the warning. That would be my conception of what I meant to be doing. Now, if the people that are running the ashram that I'm going to be practicing brahmacharya don't see it in the same way, and if they just see it as, oh, I'm getting some free labor here, you know, I'm struggling to maintain this project, and I need any hand I can get, and this person is coming to be a brahmachari, they'll it's merely a volunteer force, and they're not seeing it as a training period, and they haven't conceived of who are the teachers that I'm going to bring in to train the brahmacharis. Then I would be careful about that. I would make sure that I would be entering an ashram where the idea is that this is a time for training, right, and learning. That doesn't mean that you're not also a volunteer force, because seva and surrender and service, that's all part of that. But that would be my warning, to make sure that they've conceived of that way. I would say, well, who's going to teach me shastra? You know, if they don't have a good answer, then that's not where I would be going.
I
Does
think
that
that's
similar warning?
that's a great answer.
Okay, but that's just the
Russ, you
beginning.
just
Yeah,
yeah.
that's the warning part. That would be my warning part. Make sure you're going into a place that's conceiving of you not just as like manpower,
Mm.
but and I don't even say that judgmentally, because people are, there are people that are running temples, and there's all kind of financial concerns and other concerns, and they're struggling. So if you walk in there and say, I want to be a brahmachari, they're gonna be like, great, I have all kind of ways that I can engage you.
And
But
it is important to like have that service attitude. Let me wash the pots. Let me clean the
yes,
temple. I'll stay up later than everybody. I'll wake up earlier than everybody. You are there without any. You're basically you just give yourself
that's right.
like that. But at the same time, since me and Kaustubha have been through the ropes there, if we could have done it differently, we probably would have said, okay, I want to do work, but I actually need education because this brahmachari
Well, we were
period.
fortunate, right? Because there were people in our lives that said that stepped forward and give us that education, but
Yeah.
not everybody had that, I think. Right?
Not everybody had that, and like some people who joined an ashram in the west, they never went to India. I think India for me was like a huge part of my education in the culture
Yeah.
as well, and so that made all the difference with people who have a real taste for bhakti and Brindavan bhakti and stuff like that.
Okay.
Otherwise you start thinking like, okay, I'm doing this work, but I could be working like anywhere. And so that education is a huge thing. And so that has to sort of be negotiated. I think also when me and Kaustubha became brahmacharis, there was like sort of an open ended. We joined and we had no idea when we were ever going to stop. It was just like, I don't know, just forever-ish.
Right.
But the thing is, if I was to do it all over, if I was to instruct my son to be a brahmachari, it would be experiment. Say 6 months, I'm in.
Mhm.
1 year, I'm in, and I'm going to make that commitment,
Maybe 3 years,
whether it's
whatever it
great
is.
or whether
Yeah.
it stinks. You know what I mean? I'm just going to do it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we also don't know. And I wrote him. Oh, he's saying I wrote him directly. I said at an ashram or at home because that's like a different thing to be a brahmachari at home. A little more difficult, I think, because you need the
Well,
company of other.
yeah, I don't think that would
Anyway, you
really
want to keep going, or
work.
should we just go back and forth?
Either way, yeah. Okay, let's go back and forth. So that was one warning, right? And I have one more warning, and that is this.
Don't
And
become arrogant.
yeah, you nailed it. That was exactly it. It was
Right?
like,
Was it?
yeah, because once, renunciation is part of a spiritual path generally, but it also all commonly becomes, like a reason for pride, feeling
Sure.
superior to others. And that's exactly contrary to what we're meant to be cultivating as a brahmachari, right? But
Right.
it's not uncommon that one begins to feel like, hey, I've left everything behind. I get what's important in life, and other people are so foolish that they're wasting their time doing so many other things. And it kind of deep down in there's a seed of pride, and a little weed of pride that starts to grow. So one has to be really careful about that. You know, like in the, I would say of all the brahmachari ashrams that I've seen that are like really together and really well, you know, maintained and really creating great results. You know, it would be the brahmachari ashram in the Chowpatty temple, right in Mumbai, Radhanath Swami's temple. And you know, the 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 way that the warnings and really the standard that they set for the brahmachari is really high. It's like we were saying, it once it also sound like the opposite of what I was saying, but one rule there is that if you're asked to do service, you're not allowed to say no, right?
Yeah.
You're,
You're
you're
not
not.
allowed to say no.
Yeah. Now the people that
You
you're
can't you
working under are
can't
really
go in you
trustworthy.
can't go in the brahmachari ashram with conditions. But me and
Yeah.
Kostuba are saying, well, maybe have some conditions, because
We're
for
saying
them,
before you go into it, be sure that you got the right people there. But once you go in there, then you serve, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So
But
so that's one thing, and but also like part of the rules is like, and we spoke about this when we had Guranga Prabhu on the show back in the summer, that they have like strict rules that if the renunciates, if the brahmacharis in any way speak in a derogatory way about say the married people, then you're out. We don't tolerate that. It's like zero, you know, tolerance of that kind of like, you know, pride
there's
or
zero room for arrogance as a
yeah,
brahmachari.
yeah.
And
So
yeah,
that's
Kostuba's
important too.
right on with that. It's like once you get into I'm waking up early. What are all these other people doing? I'm so learned. What are these? It's so much room for arrogance, which is fully against the bhakti philosophy,
Yeah.
and therefore we've seen it happen. People get really strict and they just become offensive. And once you get offensive to other devotees or anybody in general, even people who are not practicing bhakti, you get removed from the circle of saintly people. You get
Mm,
removed, like the universe removes you. It's the hugest offense is to offend people, especially people on a bhakti path, but just offend anybody because God is in their hearts. I was reading this yesterday in the Chaitanya Bhagavat. It's like you just get removed.
mm,
And that's why it's the biggest offense is to offend people who've dedicated their life to bhakti, or truthfully be offensive towards anybody,
yeah.
because God is in everybody's heart.
Okay. So that's the second warning.
Hmm.
Now here's what I would say. Now, although this time, what's so special about this opportunity is that your time is exclusively meant for your practice of bhakti. It's not that there's certain hours a day that you're. No, it's like 100%. You've got the freedom to just fully immerse yourself in training in bhakti. So
Mm.
that's great. And again, I say, you know, these are the things that I would want to learn: music, shastra, cooking, ritual. Um, but really, most essentially, what you're learning is the qualities of a bhakti yogi, the qualities of a Vaishnava. That's really what you're meant to walk out of this ashram with. If you get that and you can't cook and you can't, you know, that's okay.
Mm.
Um, but really, what we wanted to walk away with are, you know, cultivating simplicity, especially brahmacharya. It's all about simplicity, right? Like in that Chaupati ashram, you got a lid. They got this little mini closet kind of thing. It's like basically just like a box,
It's like
you
a
know.
locker.
It's a locker, which is basically, but it's not even like a full locker. It's like half a locker or something like
It's
that, right?
smaller than your high school locker.
Yeah, yeah, half
And
the size of your high school locker.
they have no place to sleep. It's not like they have, okay, this is my room. There's
Yeah,
like they're sleeping like 200 people in the temple under a mosquito net. They each have their own mosquito net.
yeah,
And then as soon as they wake up, which is very early, they wipe down the floor where they sleep. They put away their mosquito net in their little locker and their pad or their sleeping bag. And it's as if they have no home. You feel homeless.
yeah.
And that's the life of a sadhu, sort of homeless.
That's right. So
And
yeah,
and there's no, remember we talked about that verse that said it's like a person traveling and coming home and that feeling of security.
hmm,
There's no security in coming home. There's only security in Krishna,
yeah,
which is
in
very beautiful.
service.
You
Yeah,
right, you get stripped away of all the comforts of
right.
material existence, and your one comfort, and that's the difference I think between brahmacharya Kostuba, and you can correct me, is like there is no other shelter. It's like, I'm just going to watch a little bit of Netflix. I'm just going to just go out to dinner. I'm just going to go out and, don't worry. I got I got a credit card. Yeah, I've got good credit. I've got my car. I've got blah, blah, blah. You got nothing. And you're left
Got
before you
nothing.
got nothing except Krishna. Good luck with that. And it cracks people. It really cracks people. I
Whoa,
can't do this.
okay.
Or they like a phoenix start to rise.
It's don't let's not paint too scary a picture when you say
Sure.
it cracks people. It doesn't necessarily like psychologically crack them, but they may be like,
Well,
you know what, I can't take
well,
this anymore.
well, here's what I was gonna say,
Yeah.
because when you deal with these extremes, you got to be careful. And this was my warning I was gonna say.
Okay.
And what do you think of this?
Let's hear.
When you get to a culture, especially, I mean, Vedic culture is very, very, like I don't know, I don't even know all the rules of Christianity. Some priests are celibate, some priests have families, some priests, I don't know all the rules. It's different. But when you say brahmachari, and
Mhm.
yogis insanely interpret this, bro, brahmachari means, you know, find your balance. No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean find your balance. Every yoga teacher who starts talking about brahmachari makes up this whole thing of what it means to them. Brahmachari means you're a celibate student. That's what it means.
Mhm.
Now, for men who are driven by their lower passions and lower chakras, that's a tall order. I'm not speaking for women. It's a different vehicle they're in. I'm not in that vehicle. For men, they are driven by those lower chakras. And when you're 29 or 21, 22 or 21 as we were, that's a tall order, especially in a very promiscuous culture. So to pull back on that, and or to even just say, I'm not going to do it, I'd start checking into your motives. Because I'm not saying this with Mike, I'd say this with anybody. Sometimes we've had trauma sexually, or we've had uh, um, uh, some type of deep, deep problem with our own sexuality. And therefore, we want to, and we don't know how to control it. And therefore, we're like, I got to cork this. This isn't good for me. And sometimes we actually have to figure out what that trauma is, or else we're sort of like corking up everything, but not necessarily dealing with the emotion behind it. And I think it's very important to start to notice these things. I don't think it's necessarily bad to say, okay, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna engage in this activity. But sometimes I think people get attracted to extremism because they've gone through some very, very extreme situation themselves. So I think it's important to check in with that, like psychologically. What do you think about that?
That makes sense. Yeah. Make sure that
You know,
your
it's a
motive isn't mixed with some kind of
repression,
yeah, repression.
perhaps.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Good, very good point, Roger. Thank you for that. So again, I would say, the most essential thing, the main thing that you want to keep, the main thing is that really it's about learning the qualities of a Vaishnava, of a Bhakti yogi: simplicity, austerity, kindness, tolerance, and above all, being respectful to every living being. And now this is important. Where do you get those qualities? How do you cultivate those qualities? Most is important is that you get them from someone who has them, by living with and hearing from people that have those qualities. So again, I guess you could call it a warning, but I would be careful to see that the ashram that I'm choosing to be a brahmachari in has those kind of people, right?
Sure.
That I'll be learning from.
Katie Bell brought up this question on the chat board, which is
Mm.
super relevant. So, like, well, who do you get coached or counseled through this, or is it just escapism and repression? If it's escapism and repression, you will hop the fence. You won't be able to stay because you can't hold on to
Well,
that
you
pressure.
harm
The
other
pressure,
people, right?
yeah,
Like,
it'll come out, and we've
yeah.
seen it come out with anger and frustration. What'll happen is you will get a higher taste from controlling your senses, or you'll become bitter, angry, and frustrated. And so, if you're bitter, angry, and frustrated, it won't last. But if you can get some sweeter taste, because there is a sweet taste in pulling back. I made it sound super extreme, but if you can actually pull it back and connect with that higher source of pleasure, that's golden.
Hmm.
That's a home run, and then you'll actually become very, very sweet, because we are very sweet when we don't engage outward. We become naturally very sweet. So
Mm.
it's a tightrope. It's a slack line that we have to balance. And you need counselors, and you need people who've been practicing that path that you feel this person's balanced. And I have been around senior people that were unbalanced, and you have to have the good common sense, like, I'm not going to take advice from these people because they're doing something wrong. And you got to find those people who you feel like they're mature in their brahmachari, and they're very comfortable there, and they're joyous in their renunciation,
That's a great
not
point.
angry in their renunciation.
I mean, I would say you mentioned it. If it's just repression, that it won't last. I would say it actually might last, right? Because someone might embrace the identity of being the renunciate, and that identity kind of becomes their whole thing. This is who I am. They can
Part of
never
their
let go of
ego.
that. Yeah, but they might not actually becoming more deeply spiritual.
Mm.
And they might actually be harming others. It can't come out in certain types of cruelty, or,
Sure.
like you say,
All right.
bitterness.
I
Yeah.
thought that was pretty good.
Okay.
Are you
Well,
good
I
with
hope
that?
that's helpful. Yeah.
All
But
right.
yeah, yeah. Not to try to scare you off it or anything like that. But those are the things that I would consider.
I think that's great advice you gave. And if he wants to talk to us, Mike, you could
Yeah.
privately. We open our doors
Yeah.
to you if you have any questions about that.
Awesome.
All right.
All right. So then now I got a question for you from an anonymous daily Zoomer.
Anonymous.
Anonymous. This anonymous person says, "Can you please speak on the feeling of intimidation?" You ever feel intimidated, Roger?
Um. Yeah, maybe.
Okay.
Intimidated. I'm a little bit more intimidating myself. I think I
Okay.
intimidate more than I feel intimidated.
Can you please speak on the feeling of intimidation? Where does it come from? I was thinking about the practice of forgiveness. Most of my conflicts, when they come up with people these days, are verbal venom, never anything physical. Thanks to my spiritual teachers, I've gotten a lot better at forgiving others, being able to put my false ego in check, asking
Sounds
myself,
like this person was a scrapper at one time,
a
but they've
scrapper?
become a scrapper, and now they've like sort of upped their game, and now it's just verbal.
Scra-
Now it's just verbal.
scra-
Before it was like a couple bottles, maybe a pipe.
Scrapper is like a real British expression, isn't it?
You're a scrapper, yeah,
I had a friend. His name was Scrapper.
scrapper.
Yeah, it was.
Bet he was a saint. Okay,
He was a
go
good
on.
guy. Okay, so most of my conflicts, when they come up with people these days, are verbal venom, never anything physical. Thanks to my spiritual teachers, I've gotten a lot better at forgiving others, being able to put my false ego in check, and asking myself, why am I so upset about the situation? And talking myself down to zoom out. Okay. I don't get it right all the time, but it's noticeably better than before. But I have also noticed that in some cases, even though I may have forgiven someone and prayed them well, I sometimes still feel really intimidated by that person. I'm just trying to understand what part of my practice I'm missing that I would feel this way. Thank you for your time.
Good question, anonymous Zoomer. We're going to talk about this today in my 6 Pillars class today about forgiveness. There's something about forgiveness is I can't let like a wild wolf into my house. It attacks me, and then I forgive it. You know what I mean? Don't let the wolf in the house. So sometimes, what good is my forgiving that wolf if I'm the one who's actually letting it in the house? So sometimes we don't even have the appropriate boundaries in place. And if I'm just forgiving, I'll forgive him. I'm having problems forgiving her. Well, guess what? You're missing a step. There's an internal issue I might have with boundaries of who I let in my life, maybe who I extend so much like we live in an insane asylum. We live in a hospital. And if I go into the hospital and start claiming, hey, why is everybody sick here? Guess what? I'm sick. If I start wondering why everybody else is sick, I'm in the hospital, man. So the hospital is filled with sick. Expect it. Humans have faults. They have problems. They have issues. Expect to be hurt. Expect that people will offend you. Expect that people will wrong you. Expect that people will cheat you. Or that's part of existence. I can't create a super safe space. There is no safe space in the material world unless you live in your closet. Good luck with that. So I really think that you have to expect that people are going through their stuff. Even good people going through their stuff. Even your teachers will be going through their stuff. But the question is, what can I do when put in a tragic situation, a hurtful situation, etc.? How am I going to react to that? Am I going to just start going out there and say, oh man, this person is untrustworthy? I knew it. I knew not to trust, and I trusted anyway. We have to be sort of like, we have to extend forgiveness and gratitude, and we have to not let this resentment consume us. If we're already, here's another big one that happens, Kaustubh,
Yeah.
is we grow up in a household where we have a brother or sister that is just cruel and ruthless. And some of you can relate to this.
Whoa, hold it.
Oh, come on.
It sounds like the Capo family here had some
No.
interesting.
Capo family wasn't so bad, but this is a
Okay.
common thing that comes up. Capo family is,
Cruel and ruthless.
I mean, they were a little cruel and ruthless, but that's, I think, but some people are super cruel. I mean, brothers, sisters, super cruel. And your parents are these, maybe, who knows, fundamentalists, or trying to set a good example, but don't like have the tools. So they say something like, don't hate your brother. You just develop a hate for your brother, and you don't hate your brother. It's bad to hate. So instead of like having an appropriate relationship with this person who's really cruel, and you're really vulnerable, you internalize your hate. Like, I'm the bad one. And so what happens is we jump over a step. And when someone is cruel and ruthless to me, I hate myself. And this is a common phenomenon, is this self-loathing, self-hate, even if people are doing something wrong to me. So forgiveness is great, and forgiveness is important, and forgiveness is a foundational thing, because as long as there's resentment in my life, I will have a very short or very low ceiling of making spiritual evolution, period. At the same time, I have to really put the microscope on me, and who am I letting in my life? Am I naively just giving everybody is a perfected being, and give room for human foibles? Like that
That's a
word,
new one.
foibles, human
We're running with
foibles.
that one. I want to
Give
look that
room
one
for
up.
human foibles. People screw up,
Foible.
and be quick to forgive. And sometimes, someone like yourself, or someone like Mary, or someone we work with on a regular basis, they might do something that sort of like stinks. You know what I mean? And they might act in a certain way. It could be a partner. It could be in the workplace. I have to learn to extend forgiveness, and I can't let that one act be, I'm writing you out of my life forever. I got
Okay,
to learn that art of forgiveness.
but what about the intimidation that this person's feeling?
I think the intimidation will be minimized when that person starts to examine their own self. I think it will just naturally be minimized, because we're letting people in, and there's some like inner engineering in that person's mind. I mean, the person start off, I'm better. I'm better now, because it's mainly just verbal. So it sounds like this person might have dealt with some anger,
Okay.
issues previously. I don't
Perhaps.
know, and this is going to be unique for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So intimidation comes from this fear, or I have this ego, and therefore it's sort of like this person's challenging my ego. And I think once you start working on your own issues, naturally intimidation, you realize that, who am I letting in? Am I letting too many people too close, or I just have some issue I can't deal with? And I'm not going to be able to change the entire world. All I'm going to do is be able to change how I react. And there's certain people that I can forgive and let it go, and things can move on. And there's certain people that should never be in my life. I see the way they behave. This person shouldn't be in my life. And I'm okay with cutting people out of my life if it's not if it's not going if it's really detrimental. There's certain people, no matter how much you help them, no matter how much you love them, no matter how much, they're just super duper toxic. And I'm not saying that just to be flippant and just let everyone go, and I'm just going to live on an island. There's certain people that want to take you down, no matter how you behave.
I'll keep that in mind.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Here's Mike from New Zealand. He's got a question via email. Hope that was useful, Mr. and Mrs. Anonymous. I have been listening as an other for over a year now. Krishna brought you to me through Mahesh. Oh,
Mahesh.
we love Mahesh.
Yeah.
Mahesh Hayward, who I found on YouTube cutting hair as I'm teaching myself to be a barber.
That's crazy.
I grew up in a Catholic home. Isn't that crazy? How you get
Yeah.
here?
In other words,
I grew up in
someone
a
was
Catholic-
looking for a barber video, and they found Mahesh, and
Mahesh.
somehow Mahesh was talking about wisdom of the sages or something.
Yeah.
Were you putting that together?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I get it.
And my wife's giving me mudras like she can't find her car keys. And I drove her car last. God, check my jackets. It's the key mudra. Ever do that one? Keys. Okay, so Mahesh, that is a cool. Okay, so anyway, you find people through random ways. No, okay, so no, I grew up in a Catholic home. Naturally, being British descent, no one goes to church anymore. Not even my mother, though we all remain spiritual in our own way. I'm not a devotee, though I do find myself aligning with Krishna consciousness more than anything. Judaism comes in second.
Okay,
Question.
we're ahead.
Okay, we're ahead. It's Krishna consciousness by a length. And here come the Jews. Jews are coming up in the man.
With Buddhists.
With the Buddhists running way behind. Come on, you Buddhists. I watch my kids, age 2 and 4, do their thing, and they crush bugs, etc. Uh-oh. I wonder when does.
Oh, hold
that
it!
come...
You missed the question. Question.
Oh. Aligning with Krishna consciousness. Okay,
Judaism
question.
comes in
I've
second.
been wondering, as I do, when does karma kick in with us? I watch my kids 2 to 4 do their thing as they crush bugs, etc. I wonder, when does that come back to them? Is it a state of mind thing? Kids are just being curious. Whereas an older kid or an adult, you know what the deal is. You've just ended life, and that's not good. Not all adults get that, by the way.
Okay.
Does the right?
Yes.
Does the law of karma start when you first hear about it, or when consciousness has matured? Good question.
Yeah, so are kids held responsible for doing things by the law of karma? Do they have to pay? Well, there's a story about that. Right?
Oh, you're not going to tell that story.
How do you think we tell? That's the story. That's the most obvious, important story, the relevant story.
Okay.
Mandavya, the Rishi Mandavya, right? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, about the bugs.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
bugs. Yes. So there was
Because people have been torturing bugs for millennia, by the way.
That's right. It goes way back. So there was a sage, a rishi, named Mandavya, and many thousands of years ago. This is from Mahabharata. This story is told, and he was in deep meditation. They said he put his arms up in the air and practiced the vow of silence, right? And he would go on in deep trance like this. Very difficult to do, right? He was like a real master, and as he's sitting there in his trance, in his little underneath a tree, in a group of thieves came upon him, and they were being chased by law enforcement officers, and they hid right in that little ashram of that sage. They hid all of their loot, and then they also hid themselves nearby.
Loot's a Sanskrit word, by the way.
Yeah, I know you like that one, right? Loot.
It is.
And so then when the law enforcement officers came, they asked the sage, "Have you seen these thieves come by?" But he was in his trance, and he was just had his arms in the air, and he was following his vow of silence. I'm not sure if he even heard them because he was so deep in meditation, or if because of his vow he was refusing to answer. But they looked around and they found the loot. They found the thieves, but they also considered the sage to be one of the thieves, right? Oh, he's in on this too, and so they arrested them all, right?
Huh.
And you know what the punishment for this thievery was?
What?
Impalement.
Oh,
Yeah, it was.
they really
this was
teach. They
strict
really
laws.
taught you lessons in the old days. Didn't
Yeah.
they? They're like, okay, not going to steal again.
So they got impaled. They all were impaled like on a post. Right, brutal. And the other thieves died, But because this yogi was like, Mandavya was like so advanced in his yoga, he was maintaining his life on that
Impaled
pole,
post.
impaled like that. He didn't actually blame anyone. He tolerated it. And then when people saw that, look, he's still alive, and they realized he's someone special. This is some special yogi. He probably wasn't guilty. So they told the
Unimpale him
uh,
immediately.
well, that's what they tried to do. The king came, and the king is ultimately responsible.
I don't even know if I would want to be unimpaled. It might hurt more to be
Well,
unimpaled.
well, this is what happened. The king came and he begged forgiveness. Please forgive me. You know, obviously you weren't involved in this, and this was a mistake. It's what we did to you was so severe. Please, and the sage actually didn't even blame. This is interesting, right? He didn't blame the king. He was interested in the law of karma and how he ended up in this position. That's a big lesson in
That's a
itself,
huge
right there.
one. That
Yeah,
we could do a whole show on why isn't he blaming the cops? Hey,
yeah,
this I was wrongly arrested, or
right.
why didn't he blame the king, who was like the
Yeah,
active
yeah,
law enforcer? He's
yeah.
saying, why am I here in the first place? Let's go to the
Right.
deeper reason.
Right. So the king, they tried to unimpale him, but just like you're saying, it was actually worse to try to do that. So they kind of cut, and he lived with that, part of that pole
Stick.
still in his body. Yeah.
I know a kid who was impaled as a child by
Really.
falling on a fence.
Oh, that's terrible.
Horrible. He lived,
Yeah.
but it was tough.
Okay. So now, because he was so curious, like why was I punished this way? The law of karma, he had faith in, but he's trying to understand what led to me ending up impaled like this. So where did he go? Who do you talk to?
Yamaraj.
Yamaraj, the ultimate enforcer, right?
He's
And so
you have a king who represents Yamaraj in one
yeah,
sense, right?
yeah, should,
And then you have
yeah,
the ultimate deva who represents Yama or the rules, the
yeah,
king of the Yamas.
right. So yeah, let's go to that rule maker, that the rule upholder in any case. So he because he's this advanced mystic, somehow he can approach this deva, this demigod, and he has a conversation. He asks him. Mandavya asks Yamaraj, what did I do? Not even with resentment or anything, but just like with curiosity. What was it that I did that led me to that fate? And so you know what he says? He says, when you were
Yeah.
a child, you were playing with some bugs and you impaled a bug. You didn't kill it, but you harmed it. And so therefore you had to suffer the same fate as the bug. Now
Even a little bug.
yes. Now when
Yeah.
Mandavya, because there's a soul in that bug, just like a soul
There's a being
yeah,
that wants to love and live and enjoy life.
it does. So what Mandavya said was, I was just a boy. I didn't understand this. This punishment was far too severe. And so he did two things. Because he was such a powerful mystic, he had like a similar power as Yamaraj. He wasn't just like a small timer, he was like a heavyweight. And so he cursed Yamaraj that he would have to take birth among the mortals. And who did he become?
Can't remember. You just
Vidura. He became Vidura.
Vidura. Oh, he came Vidura.
He became Vidura. Right.
It's a great story.
But also what he did was he had the capability or the power to like make a decree that from this day on, children will not be held responsible for their acts.
Oh, I never heard that part of it
Yeah.
because I killed a lot of bugs. I took the legs off many spiders, some daddy long legs.
How old
Killed
are you?
fish.
How far did this go?
It went a long way, man. And I'm walking around a lot of Tulsi plants to try to undo it.
Okay.
Um,
But he said in Mahabharata it says at age 14.
age of
Right.
14. Oh,
Yeah,
really?
age 14.
I've never heard that.
Yes, it's there in Mahabharata. But
Yeah.
I just think there's a principle that's whether you can get away with anything until you're 14. I wouldn't interpret it that way. The way that I would understand it is that there's like this is the kind of thing we need Chaitanya Charan, right? You'd like to draw like a graph. You need one of these kind of like two pointed graphs where it's like there's our knowledge and then there's our responsibility, right? And as our knowledge grows, our responsibility, we become responsible for how we behave. You know, as our understanding grows, our responsibility as to how we behave also grows, and what we're held responsible grows. So there in Mahabharata, it's teaching us that yeah, children are not held responsible. Animals are not held responsible for their acts, but and this is the way I believe it should be understood. It's not saying oh I'm 13 I can get away with anything. What it's saying is that as I mature, I have to become I need to understand what it means to be a human, and and what the bar of that behavior has to rise to. So as we enter into adulthood, that has to become uh, that has to be embraced and understood. Otherwise, we will suffer for it. Right? So in any case, that's the relevant story that I would share. That children aren't held responsible karmically, but at the same time, a parent wants to educate their kids and help them understand, you know, how to behave like a human, how to behave with compassion, how to care for others, and so on.
It'll come naturally
Yeah.
once the parents start acting that way. Remember
Sure.
the story the other day or last month? The big grotesque hairy ass spider when I was doing the show, and I was like, ah! And my daughter broke into tears. You just killed that thing,
How could you do
that
that,
spider. And I
Raghunath?
was like, well, because it's like, yeah, over the years I've developed compassion. I'm vegan and vegetarian, but then you still get those like
Psychological thing.
those deep down, not the ugly bugs. They deserve to die. That's got to be uprooted. That's a type of prejudice. It's
It
a type
is.
of like speciesism.
That's
Got to
right.
let go of that. So anyway, the kids change by
They do.
our activities.
Now we have another question that's for the two of us, and not a
Just the
lot of
two
time.
of us.
We can make it, you and I. All right, you ready?
Yeah.
This is a serious question. It's an honest question. It's a good question, and I think a relevant question for a lot of people.
Okay.
From anonymous, via email. Um, it says I am 41 and single, and one of my goals is to find a committed partnership. I want to meet someone who I can grow with spiritually and emotionally, but I need some advice on how to go about this without getting bewildered in the process. I recently met someone through grad school, and I was instantly connected to his energy and friendliness. We have been talking for a few weeks now, and he has expressed interest in getting to know me better, and he too is looking for a committed partnership. Okay, so far so good.
Beautiful.
I'm
Sounds
interested in
great.
getting, yeah, I'm interested in getting to know him more. However, there are some core values that we don't share. Here we go. I'm a vegetarian. He is not. He is very attached to his political identity. I am not. He has a TV. I do not. He is a big sports lover. I am not. On the other hand, he is a yoga teacher and a licensed mental health clinician. Is that how you say it? Clinician? Yeah.
Clinician. I think
Clinician
that's how you say it. Clinician.
who works in the substance abuse disorder and addiction field. He is passionate about his work and seems to have a strong service attitude. He is spiritually open, but we haven't had a serious conversation about God yet. Okay. My question: how do I navigate potential partnership with this individual as a new bhakti practitioner? I want to stay rooted in my yoga practice with confidence and commitment to Krishna, and at the same time, be open to his and my differences without being pulled deeper into the material world or turning him off by getting preachy. When I do talk about bhakti yoga in my practice, so far, he's been very open and eager to learn more. In the simplest terms, will I be compromising my spiritual growth slash liberation by choosing to date someone who may never give up meat or begin a devotional practice? I've been a vegetarian for over 20 years and cannot imagine having meat in my home. I just don't want it in my space, and I'm not sure that will ever change. I feel the same way about television, but I don't want to write him off entirely for these reasons either. Any guidance is greatly appreciated.
Good question.
You
Good
want to start it
question.
off?
Simple math here.
Okay.
Um, he likes sports and television, and he eats meat. So you can eat all the vegetables you want and perhaps be alone. Or you can figure out how to reframe spirituality and have a partner who sounds like a pretty good guy. I do think things like premarital counseling is super important. Someone like Dunya, who's part of our
Mm-hmm.
team here, Dunya or anybody does premarital counseling. They'll dig up important questions as it gets more serious. Like, okay, you're into a spiritual path. How are you going to raise your child? That's a huge one for people. How are you going to raise your child? Some people I know just say, you eat meat, that's game over. And you got to decide. You can just wait around. There might be a person, but the problem is what I see, Kay, is
Mm-hmm.
can I call you Kay? Is that
Yeah,
okay?
why not?
Okay. The problem I see, Kay, is
CK?
CK. People, I think they frame their spirituality as it can only exist in this bubble where everybody's just like me and then I'm spiritual. And I just think there's like a bigger picture of spirituality. And and I'm not necessarily going to change the entire world. I have to figure out how am I going to adapt in this world where I can live with people who are sort of on a different path, but I want to just I want to love them and encourage them wherever they're at, and I got to be okay with that. I got to be ultimately okay, and they have to be okay with that. And it could cause problems, or it could be just, or it could be a an accelerator for my spiritual evolution. Because we've seen people with the same gurus, with this on the same spiritual trajectory, and they're just like it still doesn't work out. And we've seen examples of people whose spouses practice another faith, and it works out wonderful. So I think you have to be very, very broad-minded, even to make advancement in spiritual life. And I think in such a situation, it's going to ask you to sort of like mature your framework of what spirituality is. Um, and yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Hmm.
Pass the baton to you.
Okay. So I agree with all that you've said. This is it's tricky, right? It's so tricky, especially as you get older, and you're thinking, okay, maybe I want to have children and so on. And I might not find that person who I see that all of my values and lifestyle ideas just align with perfectly. But here's a person that I like and that I admire, and um, you know, I get the difficulty of the circumstance, and I appreciate how thorough this person was in kind of explaining the situation. This would be my ultimate. I guess, like, if I were to wrap it all up, this is what I would say, because we have to be real careful when it comes down to something like this, like, because our passions can drive our like our decision making. And so, if we're attracted to a person, we might easily say, "Oh, it's all going to work out." You know,
Yeah.
I talked to someone, they thought it was a good idea. Yeah, Raghunath said, "Yeah, go for it." I'm going to do it. You know, but I would say this is that it definitely, as you're saying, it requires some getting on the same page and really understanding each other. And so this would be my point. Say you sat down with this person and you said, "Well, I'm a vegetarian and that's important to me." And they say, "Oh, that's cool with me, no problem." You know,
Right.
uh, that's fine. And I also have this kind of spiritual thing in my life that I'm into. That's cool. I like spiritual people. Um, but I would say really that this person, they really need to understand you and not just accept an agreement. But that talk, those discussions, they have to go so deep that you get that this person understands why you're a vegetarian, that this person understands why your spiritual life is important to you, and the ways that it plays out. If they can not just like, okay, I'll sign on the dotted line for that. You're gonna be a vegetarian and I'm gonna eat meat, and I agree. But really, I would say that you need to feel that beyond just accepting whatever agreements you lay out, that this person really understands you, and I would say even appreciates you for those values. They may not live the exact same lifestyle, but if they can understand why you have these values and appreciate you for having those values, I think then there's a good chance that it could work and that you'll get over the bumps and, that will, likely arise.
Beautiful.
All right. Okay.
Beautiful. You know what Grandma Terry's advice would be?
Grandma Terry, that's your mother?
Meet their parents. Meet their parents. Because if one of the parents are crazy, you're marrying into crazy.
Okay, meet them.
She's
Meet-
and watch out for monkeys
and you're saying like, am
in
I ever?
tropical places?
Yeah, that's what I say. Meet their parents. Don't sit on cliffs in tropical places, and never talk to the cops.
Never talk to the cops. That was one of her advices. Never
bring
bring
it to
it
the
up with the cops. Figure it out yourself.
Yeah, the neighborhood figures it out themselves. You never talk
The
to
neighborhood
the
will figure out the water's balanced. Anyway, I think that's great advice.
cops. All right. I think that's it, huh?
Here we go. That's
Over
it.
time?
That's
Okay.
it. Thanks everybody for joining us. Great questions. You can also send questions in for next Saturday. Wisdom of the Sages 108 at gmail.com.
No show tomorrow.
And we have a day off tomorrow. We'll see you Monday at 5
Catch us-
a.m. Or you can
catch us
listen on
with
Apple
Namra.
Podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Wherever or YouTube. And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, make sure you write us a review and tell us about your spiritual journey. Join me at 10 o'clock this morning. A bunch of you have already signed up for 6 Pillars of Bhakti Yoga. You can sign up. It's a 2.5-hour lecture, how to apply this stuff to your life. It's at supersoulyoga.com. You can sign up there. And I'll see you at 10. Kaustubha, good questions today.
Great questions. Great answers
Great
you had
questions.
there, Roga.
And Mara, good sorting through those questions and picking out the good ones and getting rid of those bad questions. Just kidding. We try to answer all of them.
By the way, is there a Bhakti Recovery meeting this morning, Mara?
Yeah, at 9:30, there's a Bhakti Recovery Group meeting.
Okay. Great.
9:30. So if you're part of our Patreon team, Patreon community, Bhakti Recovery is today. It's a great way to sort of like empty your cup, meet supportive people. It's one of my coolest things about what we've got going on in Patreon right now. And again, if you're not supporting us and you'd like to, and you get something out of what we're doing, please check us out at patreon.com/wisdom of the sages. This is happening because of your guys' support. And so this is all communities. What do we call it? Community
Sponsored?
supported radio.
Yeah. And we're on Namaras tomorrow, 3 p.m., right? Check it out on
Yeah,
Facebook.
we're now 3 p.m. Eastern time.
The late morning program.
Now, this seems silly what I'm doing, just waving my hand like this, but this is the essence of all teachings right here. Dance and sing.